Welcome back, DLF Nation. This is our third episode of Manic and Chill. Back with Shane is the worst, Shane Manila on Twitter, Dynasty Trades HQ. I'm your host, Charles Chill, FFB, Dynasty and Chill. And today we're going to talk about draft picks. This is a polarizing topic out there in the community right now, Shane. Whether to hold your draft picks, whether to fade next year's rookie class because of the uncertainty with the college season. So, first of all, how's it going, my friend? They let us back for episode 3. I think this is going to be a good one because I'm pretty passionate about this topic. What's going on?
Yeah, man, they tried to stop us. So we were off a week because, life intervened and stuff happened. And then we tried to get on and other people were using the channel. But we're back until DLF tells us otherwise. We're going to keep showing up.
Yes, sir.
And even afterwards, we might continue to show up. I don't know. We haven't decided yet. But I'm good, man. And yeah, look, I love all these fantasy topics. There's not a topic about the future, about theory that I don't love talking about, except IDP. Anything related to IDP, I don't care about. Don't bother asking me.
Yeah, man, we kind of brainstormed what topics we wanted to talk about today, and this has come up on a couple of podcasts I've listened to in the last 2 weeks, and we did take a week off. Different commitments for both of us, but we're going to try to go a little more frequently leading up to the season because I think there's a few other theory topics we can talk about with this season upcoming. But my idea with 2021 draft picks specifically was, do we fade them? Do we buy into them? I'm pretty clear with my process. Anyone that's listened to my show kind of has an idea of my thoughts on how I'm approaching draft picks, at least right now, why I'm very, very high on wanting to acquire as many as I can. Startup drafts or even just trades where I can get draft picks back and save them for the future. I'll start with you and I'll just ask your initial thoughts on rookie picks. How is it any different from, well, let's do this. How do you normally approach rookie picks? I kind of know because we've played in a ton of leagues together. But is it any different this year because of the uncertainty with the college season, because of the uncertainty of the NFL season? Is it better to have more draft picks going into the season, or is it better to fade them and try to get in on some of these 2020 rookies that may be a little more attainable given the uncertainty of the upcoming season?
So, I mean, I guess it's going to depend on what you're looking for out of next year. Are you trying to win next year, or are you thinking you're a year away? And if you think you're going to win next year, you need to know that COVID could come along and decide that that's just not going to happen. We talked a bit off air how, you were talking about, I think it was a Cincinnati Red player just ruled himself out, or was it?
Yeah, well, just anyone that's followed baseball for the first 3 days that it's opened back up, the games are still going to be played. The games are still going on as scheduled. The Marlins are playing the Mets or whatever the matchup is. They're not canceling games. They're not even considering it. But there's been teams that have missed 3 or 4 starters, and it's just, hey, the lineup was set. All of a sudden, this guy's ruled out, less than an hour before the game. They just put somebody else in there. And baseball, it's a little easier because you can just throw, a catcher in for a catcher or an outfielder in for an outfielder. And, yeah, you may change the lineup around a little bit. But I think we're going to see the same thing in football where all week we can talk about this player is going to be a great matchup. He's going to be a great play against this defense. And then, boom, come Sunday, one side of the ball, whether it's the opposing defense or it's the entire offense or parts of the offense it's just decimated. And the whole game plan can change. We don't know that going in. 1 or 2 missed players could change the approach that the coach takes for the entire game. So trying to project, matchups even week to week is going to be more difficult. So, yeah, I've just noticed that from baseball. There's been a couple teams. The Reds had 2 guys today announced in their lineup, and then boom, and they're just out. And they just call somebody up and put them in their place, and the game goes on. So it's just so much of that I think is going to happen this year in football that we can't predict for. You can't trade now to make your rosters more, more flexible for that kind of thing right now. I think it's really impossible to predict.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, we're still going to have the same amount of roster spaces.
Right.
We're still going to have, every league's going to have 30, or they're going to have 35, whatever, even if a commissioner expands it. But it's not like I'm going to have 40 roster spots to year 20.
Right.
So me just taking on a bunch of players, 1, it's not possible. 2, it's not even realistic that it's going to help because we don't know who's going to get COVID.
Right.
Julio Jones and Damian Harris have the same chances of getting COVID. Obviously, one goes out, it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more than the other guy. So that's why I'm all about accruing those. I'm always about accruing rookie picks anyway, because I just like assets that don't depreciate. But also, rookie picks can't get COVID because they're not human beings. So it's never like I'm going to go to my roster and go, well, I can't use this third round pick because it has COVID. Nope. I can trade that third rounder to another team, even if it's just a win that week. Especially towards the end of the year. We all buy wins at the end of the season. At least I hope we do. Because I know that I have. I've done it for years now where the year's ending and players are hurt and I need a starting running back and it's just a guy. I'll send the third over for, Bo Scarbrough, and let him get me 15 points that week. I'll gladly trade that to get into the playoffs. So I think you need to accrue as many rookie picks as possible. Third, fourth. Now apparently every league we're in has fifths and sixths because we're making rookie drafts as deep as possible. I'm not sure why, but whatever. Our waiver wires are trash too. Just as a side note, stop making your rookie drafts 8 rounds. Like that takes the fun out of the waivers, man. But yeah, I'm just going to try to accrue every third and fourth I can. If I can get seconds thrown in on any and get them. Because like I said, a rookie pick can't get COVID. And like you said, I mean, players are going to be going out a half an hour before the game and you can't account for that. And you're going to need to be able to be super flexible. Like there's going to be times when you look at your rosters during bye weeks and you're like, I literally don't have a player that I can start at this position. Like I'm going to start a guy that I know isn't playing, which is a terrible feeling because if he's not playing, there's no way he can score. It's impossible. No one that has ever been inactive has ever scored a point for you. If you're not already accruing those picks, I do it now. And I've always done this too. I'll buy 2022 picks too, because I know they're going to end up having value as much as we're going to end up trading around the 2021 picks. 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this has been a kind of a foundation thing I've talked about all summer is even if you're getting a 1-for-1 trade where you're trading away a player that you project to be in your lineup, let's say it's your wide receiver 4, your wide receiver 5. If you can get the rookie pick, straight up square fair value rookie pick right now, it can't hurt to maybe take a little extra depth on your team. And you don't need to necessarily trade it for a profit. You're trading it for the flexibility of, hey, I'm going to be able to bank that pick. It's untouchable during the season. And then I'm going to be able to pick my spot during the season. One, you can see where your team is. A lot of my teams they're good teams, but they're not teams that are completely dominant. But I'm also going into this season, I would say 95% of my teams can compete for the championship this year. And that's not because they're the best team or the second best team in the league. If they're the 5th or 6th best team and they have a little depth, man, what if the top couple teams, a lot of times the top couple teams aren't built this same way. They may be built with studs and duds. Well, what if 4 studs are out for multiple weeks? Like, I think a lot more teams can compete this year, which means I want to have the teams during the season that has that flexibility to say, oh, hey, Shane's team's fallen out of it because 4 of his best players have gotten COVID. And now he's got James White and he's selling him for a second. Now, is James White for a second a great deal right now? No, I think it's the opposite. But James White in week 8, if he's been putting up running back 2 or better numbers for 5 straight weeks, I'll buy it in week 8. I'll buy those points to put in my lineup for the rest of the season. And that's been one of my weaknesses. And I'll be completely honest about this. I am such a value hoarder in Dynasty. When I can preach this all day, all night, but then when we get to the season, and Shane's like, oh, hey, Scott, Mohamed Sanu has been putting up wide receiver 3 or better weeks for like 5 straight weeks. You want to trade me that third for him? Now, Mohamed Sanu hasn't been worth a third in 2 years. So I have a hard time stomaching that during the season, knowing that I'm taking a value loss. Because as soon as that season ends, or as soon as his temporary opportunity is up, I've lost on that trade. I'm never getting that third back. I know the only time he would ever be worth a third, it would be if he's in the same situation the next season. And there's so much that can happen from season to season with those guys. You can't really bank on it. So I have a hard time trading picks for players during the season to get points when I know I'm taking a loss. And that's something that I need to be better at. But you got to have the extra picks, right? Because there's going to be some teams, I'm sure you have some and I have some too, where they fall out of it because of just some bad luck or some bad variance. And I'm going to be aggressive. Man, if I have a Mohamed Sanu and I can now get a third, boom, he's gone. He's gone within the next hour. First one to offer me a third, it's yours. I'm not going to even mess around. I have too many teams to try to haggle on trades like that during the season. So if I'm set on selling a guy that maybe has a month window of value that he's never going to get again, I want to be the team that can jump up and say, oh, Shane just put that guy on the block. Give it to me. Put him on my roster. I'll buy those rest of the year points. And know that I'm taking a value loss going into the offseason. So I want to have that flexibility. I don't want to be the top heavy team that trades all their picks and has to trade a stud like a 2-for-1 to get players that are on the field. Like, I don't want to be stuck in that situation. So I think buying picks just for future capital flexibility into the season when we don't know what's going to happen is a smart strategy. Question for you is, I've taken it a step further. I'm willing to break up some of my competing teams right now. I'm willing to take a 2021 first in a super flex for Tyler Boyd, even if I'm the best team and he's my wide receiver 3 in my lineup every week. I'll take the pick now. As long as I can fill that short term, that spot, I'll gamble that I can buy more for that first in the season. Have you taken it that far? Or are you really looking at your team deciding, do I even want to bother selling or buying right now? Is it more team specific for you?
I'm more of, I'm going to let the chaos come with a work plan in place for when it does occur. I don't want to try to preempt the chaos that I know is going to happen. And just for an example, you know me, I can't pay attention to anything that's going on, but I was listening to you. I just jumped on Twitter real quick, and the Marlins, they've been playing baseball for 3 days now. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 COVID tests that have tested positive since last night. Yep. So plus they had one guy before that. So that's 4 guys on a baseball team where it's not really a contact sport. So yeah, what do you think is going to happen when football starts happening? Like it's just going to be decimation. So, but back to what you're talking about, I'm not trying to preempt the chaos. I'm just trying to be prepared to deal with it as it comes. So if I accrue a bunch of rookie picks, and then I see in season, well, guess what? It's not going to matter because Julio Jones got COVID, Matt Ryan got COVID, DJ Moore has COVID, and I'm losing these guys for 4 weeks. Well, then I'll just have extra rookie picks. You know what I mean? Because of that, I'm not going to sell them just to, when I see that 5 of my top guys are out. Well, there's only, so many fingers I can stick in the dam before it just explodes and drowns me. So I'm just going to be able, and like you talked about flexibility, I just like, if I have the picks and I see that I can use them, great. If I have the picks and I see that my team is getting absolutely decimated, well, then, you know what? Maybe I can sell off some of my ancillary pieces then. Maybe if Tyler Boyd is still active, and I can get 2 first rounders, like you're saying, or whatever at that point, maybe a first rounder and a second rounder, because for whatever reason he's fine. I'll do that. But I just don't want to think too far. Like, you want to lean into the skid, but you don't want to cause the skid kind of thing. And that's kind of where I'm at. I just want to know that I am flexible enough to go either way. And then just realize there's some leagues that it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter how well I'm prepared, how many rookie picks I take. It's just my teams are going to get decimated by it. That's, if I have stacks on teams where I have Carson Wentz and Jalen Reagor and Miles Sanders and, Dallas Goedert, and one of them gets COVID, well, guess what? That team is done. Because that's just going to run through the whole team, and all 4 of those guys who are foundation pieces are going to be done for next year, for 4 weeks. You can't really usually survive losing 4 top guys for 4 weeks.
Right.
Like I said, but if I have the rookie picks and I'm just plugging the dam week by week, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to behoove you to be super aggressive. Like you were saying at the beginning of that, if I put Mohamed Sanu on the board, you need to get out there quick and just be like, here's a trade offer, because you can't wait. Because if you do wait, someone else is going to jump in there. And there's at least one of me, or at least one of you in every league where people are just, boom, they're making moves immediately. They're on Twitter. They see, all right, Tom Brady's out with COVID. I guess I need to go make an offer for, I don't even know who their backup is, whoever that guy is. Yeah, there you go. Still? All right, whatever. He's got a little rushing. He's got rushing ability. But, look, Drew Brees goes down. Jameis Winston was worth a second last week. Guess what? He's worth a first right now. You better make that offer quick, because the longer you wait, the higher that price is going to go up. Because there's guys like me that, like you were saying, like, I'm not going to haggle. If you offer me a decent trade, even if I think I can get a little more value, I'm not risking it. I'm just going to take the trade and move on. So yeah, just being aggressive and just being prepared to be flexible is kind of how I'm handling it.
Well, and I think once the season starts. We'll have a better handle of how this looks week to week. And I think you have to just kind of assume that every single player, what we kind of hope for is that, the one thing that kind of concerns me with baseball, the reason I mentioned the Reds earlier was they had a player this morning that was in the lineup. He showed up at the stadium and just said he didn't feel good. He
Right.
didn't even test positive. He just didn't feel good. So they pulled him out and said, stay away from the ballpark, because the team's going to look at it and say, well, hey, like if you don't feel good and you may have COVID, even if you test negative, we don't want you infecting 6 other guys on the team, because then the next week we're playing with a decimated squad that has no chance to win. So, we may see players that don't even test positive, that they just say, you know what, I'm just not feeling great, or maybe I have a little bit of an injury and I haven't been able to, get back to the team. So there's just so much that can happen that we have to almost anticipate, hey, I'm going to go into the season just assuming that every one of my starters is going to miss 2 or 3 games, and if they actually had COVID, maybe there's something to be said about maybe they got it once and they're going to be less prone to getting it again. Maybe there's a little bit of an angle there, but we don't even know that. So I'm just going to assume 25% attrition for all my teams, that I need to have 20% more depth on a typical roster than I would in a normal season. And you really have to abandon all principles of trade values when we get to the year, because I think you're going to see, if all of this madness happens, you're going to see guys that come out of nowhere. There's going to be value, draft pick value, trade value placed on players that test positive, right? If you're in a pinch, you're in week 10 and you need to rattle off 3 wins to get to the playoffs and you lose a starter, you may have to go out and swap that starter for a guy that's just active, that's just scoring points. And there's going to be a bounce back of values for guys that, we can't even predict who it's going to be. But let's say Danny Amendola somehow plays 16 games. Well, dude, that guy's going to be valuable to somebody because he's playing 16 games and 75% of the other receivers aren't. So there's going to be value bounce backs and value rise ups out of nowhere on guys that would have no long-term value, that their value is literally what you said, Bo Scarborough. Well,
Yeah.
dude, he's going to start this week, so he's worth a third. Even if he starts for 1 week in his entire career, he's worth a third that 1 week for the shot that he could give you, 15, 20 points. So I think we just have to abandon everything that we know about trade value principles during the season when you're making some of these moves. You cannot stick to, well, a 30-year-old receiver that's a wide receiver 5 is not worth more than a third. He might be. That might be the market price in your league, and you have to be willing to adapt.
Because he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in a week. It's going to happen. I mean, assuming the whole season plays, or even look, either way, you can do whatever you want next year. If you want to go for, this is why it's going to be super fun, because it is going to be absolute just mania, which I adore. You can go any way you want to. If you're just like, screw this, I'm not even trying to deal with figuring out how to win next year. I'm trading everything for picks and everything in sight that I can. You can do that, and that's fine. You know what I mean? If that's what you want to do, is kick the can down the river. Kick the can down the river? Down the street. Yeah, down the road. You shouldn't be kicking cans into the river. That's
littering, Shane.
Yeah, pollution and littering. But if you want to, you want to kick the can and you're just like, hey, I'm taking on every pick because it's got to be better in 2021, right? In theory, maybe, I guess. Or you can go, you know what? I have all these extra picks already. I'm just selling everything. Like, I don't care. Julio Jones is out for the next 3 weeks. Well, I'm going to trade him for 2 wide receivers that aren't nearly as good because, 2 guys have a better chance of playing than 1 guy, right? Sure. I just love that that's what it's going to be. It's just like you said, abandon everything. Next year is like an uncapped year in the NFL. It's going to be madness, but it's important that you use that madness to your advantage. Mm-hmm. It's going to be real simple to go, well, this week I'm doing this. This week I'm doing that. Next week I'm doing this. Try to, as best you can, stick to a plan until that plan is just completely obliterated in week 9 when you're like, all right, I can't trade any more rookie picks because I don't have any and my whole team's out. Yep. Then switch up your plan and go, all right, well, now it's time to sell those guys. So, you're going to have to stick to a plan for a few weeks, but then adjust as, the facts on the ground change, and they're going to change a lot. It's going to happen. Like I said, from looking at Twitter today, there's 4 Marlins. They've been playing 3 days and 4 Marlins have already tested positive for COVID.
Yep.
And, they didn't have a bubble like the NBA, but they definitely had a more closed spring training environment than what the NFL is going to have, and even the game environments. And it's, just there's less personnel involved with baseball than there is with the NFL. Just don't go into next year expecting anything to go well. It's not going to. It's just not. Up until this week, I didn't even think there would be a season. I got a little bit optimistic over the last couple of days, like, oh, it's really going to happen. And now just reading through the the MLB tweets, I'm like, oh, maybe not. They're going to play. Someone's going to play. They'll probably push through it because it's $1 billion business. Regardless of your political views on it, our president wants the country to be open. NFL owners are going to fall in line with that. Someone's going to be out there playing next year. It might be XFL guys. It might be AAF guys. It could be guys coming from leagues you didn't even know exist, like the Arena Bowl 2. Someone's going to be out there. So just be prepared to, like I said, you're going to have to be flexible. And it's good because it's a good thought process. It's a good mind exercise. You can use it in the future. Like, your brain's going to expand on how you look at things, and you can use that going forward. Obviously not the same. Hopefully it's not going to be COVID related every year, but it's going to be kind of, I think, good for a lot of dynasty players, that it's just going to expand your thought process and how you look at things.
Yeah, I think it's going to magnify the fact that we think we know a lot more than we really do about players and their lives and their situations and their teams and the coaches and all that stuff. I think that's just going to magnify this year that we really don't know. We can sit there and say, oh, I really love this player's situation. We don't know what's going on in his head. We don't know what's going on within the team. We don't know what's going on in the coaches' heads or anything like that. So we tend to make sweeping statements about things that we really think we know, and we really don't know all that much. I think another thing would be exactly what you said. There could be players that are relevant this year that are literally on 100% of waiver wires, and we're talking 40-plus rosters deep. So pay attention. Pay attention to, okay, well, hey, this guy came out of the game halfway through because he wasn't feeling well. Who stepped in? What did the teams do? Who was the next man up? Did they change maybe how they played once a player went out? I have heard some people say they think this may be one of the craziest fantasy seasons because in 2011, when there was a labor agreement and there was a potential holdout, the defenses were the ones that get decimated if they have 2 or 3 guys out. There are some defenses that are really reliant on a shutdown corner or a pass rusher or something like that. And if they lose a couple guys on defense, a lot of times in offense, especially with a creative play caller and a good quarterback, you can sometimes put anybody out there and still execute against a defense that doesn't know what they're doing. So we could see a gap if you have, let's just use the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, I think, are already on such a path. They literally are the only team that brought back 100% of their passing game from last year. And they added Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if the Chiefs, let's just say somehow they're better at everybody else at avoiding COVID absences. If they're going up against 6 depleted defenses this year, they could put up historic numbers. And you can insert anybody into that. Any offense that maybe has some good luck on their side week to week and goes up against a defense that loses, 2 pass rushers and a corner, it could just be, players going off out of nowhere. So I think in knowing the teams, knowing the depth charts, and kind of knowing those situations you want to play into is important. But I wanted to ask you this, because you hit on some, and this was going to be the second half of our show, and we always go like 50% longer than we say we are. The 2021 class, I've heard people say, well, hey, there's not going to be a college season. I'm pretty confident that if they play a college season, they're going to do it in the spring, which means anybody with a pulse of being a top 3-round pick would be stupid to play college football in February or March. I'd much rather just go to the combine and meet with NFL teams. Yeah. And, I hear people saying the NFL is going to cater to the NCAA. The NFL doesn't care. They will run their product. They will run their combine, their draft whenever they want. They're using the NCAA as basically a free minor league system that they don't have to support or pay or anything. This is just like a free audition platform for the NFL. So I don't really think they care who plays college football, especially if they know that all the draft prospects that are like top 100 picks are just going to skip college football anyway and go prepare for the NFL. I don't think they make any decisions to cater to most of the college players that hang out and want to play in college. So 2021 picks, I'm fine saying if you're prepared next year, if you do your research on the rookies and you already have a handle from playing in Devy leagues, kind of who the guys are, I actually think it's going to be a bigger advantage next year for some of us drafting in rookie drafts, especially people like myself that I'm an analytics guy. I'm a data guy. I don't need to even watch a player to tell me if I like him or not. So people that aren't going to have that 2019 set of film or 2020 set of college season film to go on, you're basically just looking at profiles. You're drafting based on profiles and then draft capital as far as what the NFL says. So what's your thoughts on values of picks? Like, are you going to devalue some players next year because there's not a college season, or are you just going to kind of let the NFL take care of that for you? If they're still confident, then you're still going to be confident.
Well, I'm still very confident because the top guys are the guys that we are already out there. They can take a year off. I already know what Chuba Hubbard is. I already know what Travis Etienne is. I kind of know what Kylan Hill is. I know what Trevor Lawrence is. And then the wide receivers, of course, Jamar Chase or not Jamar Chase, but whoever. We know who the top guys are. Usually I'm going to fade a 1-year wonder anyway because of the analytics that are involved with it. Usually it's a late breakout guy that has a low hit rate anyway. So guess what? That guy wasn't going to really be on my radar anyway until the second or third round. So whatever, he wouldn't have existed. I'm not even remotely worried about it. The one thing I probably will do though, like I said, if I don't end up using all my picks in season to win weeks, is I will try to have a ton of second and third rounders because there are going to be a lot more guys that we have no idea about. We just don't
slip through. There's going to be some inefficiency in drafts for sure.
Right. So I'm going to, I'll try to get a bunch of them. Like my usual approach. I want high first rounders because, those guys are going to hit. And then I want a bunch of second and third rounders because I just want as many lottery tickets as I can possibly get. And especially next year with no film. Because like I said, the guys that I want to know anyway, Terry McLaurin didn't break out until he was 23 in college, 22 in college, whatever. He would have fallen through the cracks, and he's probably not a guy that I would have been targeting in the first rounds. But if I had 6 second round picks, there's a good chance that I end up with someone like him on my roster. We know who the top guys are. Like, give me the first in a super flex, give me the first 6, 7 picks. I'm fine. I'm not even a little bit concerned. These guys don't need to play another down. I don't want them to play another down. I hope Hubbard and Etienne never touch the field again until the NFL. Same with Hill. Najee Harris, I could care less about because I'm like you. He's 30 years old. So I seriously, by the time that guy plays in the NFL, he's older than both of us. So I don't want him. But you know what? And I'll love the narrative on guys like that though, because I'll be like, well, he had a year off, so let's tread on his tires. And
yeah,
we'll be like, well, that actually has no impact on an NFL career. It's more to the fact that he's 26 years old. But you know what I mean? Like, it'll also help with narrative like that. People will sell themselves on why these running backs that didn't play last year that probably weren't that good anyway, or weren't going to be high picks, should be high picks now because they don't have tread on their tires.
Well, and I think you kind of hit on it that the NFL teams do a lot of the work for us in Dynasty already. If they draft a guy in the first round, we have no choice but to basically push them up to a certain range in Dynasty. Even if you want to fade them like Henry Ruggs or someone like that, that was a very popular fade for a lot of people because, of his production profile in college. It's only so far down you can push him. So the NFL is still going to speak to what they think on a lot of these players. And I will, without knowing firsthand what an NFL team is saying, I will say that they probably are pretty sure at a lot of, they already have a player pool of who they're looking at as the top first couple rounds in next year's drafts. Now they're going to have to do a little more advanced scouting and interviewing and projection to find, maybe the next Justin Jefferson or the next Denzel Mims or someone like that maybe they wanted to see another year of college out of. But I'm generally going to go with what the NFL says on a lot of players. And the other thing is the real question is basically, is the NFL's evaluations going to suffer because they don't have that last year of college? If you believe that it is, if you are somebody that puts a lot of weight into, and if you're an NFL front office that puts a lot of weight into, well, hey, what did this guy do when because the one drawback is it is very hard for freshmen and even sophomores in college to command targets, carries, whatever it might be. The elite of the elite guys typically will do that. But there's a lot of good players that they really don't get true opportunity, especially at some of the bigger schools. They don't get true opportunity until they're juniors or redshirt sophomores. So you may see some guys that enter the draft where you're like, well, this guy didn't do anything in college. And then you can start hearing the narrative on that player. Well, he would have been the number 2 receiver at LSU this year, but the season was wiped out. So it's all projection. You're all drafting him basically on his physical profile. And so I think the combine next year is going to be a bigger deal. The guys that stand out at the combine, it's going to be a stronger flexion point because we don't have the third year or the second year of production to go off of. But, generally I'm not fading rookies next year because I do think this will be another podcast because we're going to wrap up. But I also think that no college football season in the fall, if they have to push a weird season that happens like January to March and half the good players sit out, this is going to destroy college football, the NCAA, the FBS playoff. I think it's going to destroy that as we know it. And so I think next year you may actually see more players enter the draft. And they're going, you know what? I don't know what the NCAA is going to look like in 2021. So I'm just going to go to the NFL and see what happens. Versus, oh, hey, college football seems to have it all together with, a bunch of programs folding because their athletic department didn't make any money. I don't really want to go back to the NCAA, especially when I realize I'm not getting paid anything. So I actually think you could see a stronger class next year with more variance. So I agree with you. Man, if I can get 12 picks next year and know that most of the people in my leagues are going to be worse at drafting in those second, third, fourth rounds, that's the way I'm going. So I think for what we talked about earlier with picks being good to use in the season and being more valuable next year, get as many as you can now and just see what happens in the next 6 months.
Yeah, and just real quick on the NFL evaluation, I don't know that they're better evaluators. Well, okay, well let's. Most of them are better evaluators than us, or maybe we wouldn't have those jobs. Who freaking knows? My point is, it doesn't matter if they're good at evaluating because they do the evaluation, and they're the ones that are going. Well, this guy's getting drafted in the second round, and he's going to get everything that goes along with that, which is most importantly opportunity and the chance to redeem himself. Mm-hmm. If JJ Arcega-Whiteside was a 6th round pick last year, he would have been cut. He's a 2nd rounder. Guess what? He's going to get an opportunity this year. Yep. So this is why, why I often fade deep round sleepers when we're like, oh, this guy in the 7th round is really going to, no, it's probably not going to happen, guys. There's a reason for that. He's not going to get the opportunity and he's not going to get the chance to make the mistakes that a 1st rounder is. He's just not. It's just the reality of it. And yeah, it will be fascinating to see what happens to the NCAAs. Personally, my thought on it all is if you're a 20-year-old college kid and you aren't allowed to apply for the draft yet because of the, your high school class didn't graduate 3 years prior or whatever, you should never touch the field. You should go, I'm taking a year off. The NFL has enough film on me. Now, unfortunately, not enough of them would do that where it would, really make a difference. And then the NFL would have to be like, all right, well, this isn't going to affect their draft capital. Instead, the NFL being the NFL would go, oh, well, I didn't see any tape on him last year. So I don't know if he's still good. But I would love to see every kid that's not eligible, it's within a year of being eligible for the NFL draft, just to go, nah, I'm not playing this year. Not unless I get paid from the NCAAs. But that's a different topic for another day.
It is. I do hope that maybe this kind of shifts things towards maybe being some sort of real development system for the NFL versus these guys basically going to college, because it's hard to translate from college to the NFL because the agendas for, college programs versus an NFL team are just totally different. Last thing I'll plug, because listeners should go listen to the Trades HQ podcast if they haven't. You mentioned something that was a great point. I work for a big company, and what happens when things get tight? The CEO and the executives aren't the ones getting cut. And guess what? The real cost efficient people on the front lines that aren't getting paid squat, that are putting in a lot of the hard hours, they don't get cut either. What gets cut is the middle management. Well, hey, this guy makes a lot of money, but really we could probably take his job and absorb it between both levels, even below or above. That's where the cuts come from. If the salary cap goes down, you talked about this on the Trades HQ show. If the cap goes down even 20 million, 30 million, teams are going to look at it and go, well, we're not cutting the Amari Coopers, but we're not going to cut the 3rd round receiver that we drafted because he's on a $720,000 contract. We can plug him in as the wide receiver 3 or 4 and not lose a lot and get some cheap labor. Who we are going to cut is, the Randall Cobb making $9.5 million that we can replace with a rookie. Maybe he's a little bit, worse off right away, but I think you're going to see a lot of attrition from that middle tier of veterans next year, which is part of the reason why I think the players need to play this season. because you have a huge bulk of the Players Association that's made up of those 4, 5, 6-year veterans that are on their first deals that are, fringe players, but every year they're battling with a rookie that could replace them. They need to get paid this year because I think a lot of them are going to be out of work next year, and the cap going down, there's going to be no market for a lot of those mid-tier players. So I think teams may even push, some smart analytic teams may say, dude, give me the 20 rookie picks next year. I'll take shots on 5 receivers in day 2 of the draft and see what happens, because they're going to be able to get them at a very, very cheap cost. So something for a future show, but check out your podcast because you mentioned that and you guys kind of skipped over it when you started talking about trades, but I think it's something that's not being talked about enough.
Yeah, we'll see if we get some comments on that, see how people feel. We're not going to let people tell us what to talk about on the show, but if they have some ideas that they think are cool and we actually think are cool, I'm sure we're going to address them.
Yep.
I ain't got nothing to plug. All I got to plug is it's still Scott Fish season in my mind. So everybody go donate to something.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows where to find us. You probably already listened to our shows, Dynasty Trades HQ, Dynasty and Chill. You see our Twitter handle in this nice little graphic that DLF made up for us. So yeah, give us feedback. Let us know if you want to see any future topics, and we'll be trying to hit this consistently up until start of the season. So we're signing off. See everybody.
I think we need a theme song. We need a cool theme song.
Yeah, right. Get us a theme song if you have any ideas. We're down for it. Later, everyone.
Bye.